the cycle of introducing new technologies in aircraft is unfortunately quite long, and that's also why we are hammering on it now. We need to investigate these things now to get to some kind of climate neutral aviation in 2050. It is a much broader problem, and it's not something you can only solve through making things a bit more efficient.
I think you need technology, but I think it's a little bit foolish to think that only with technology we're going to get anywhere.
Can we take current aircraft and fly them in a different way to reduce their climate impact?
This is Coffee with Martin. In this episode, we step away from technology and look at the bigger question behind it. Can innovation alone make aviation sustainable? Or does the real challenge happen somewhere else? I'm joined today by Vincent Meijer, Assistant Professor within the Control and Operations Department, and he researches the climate effects of aviation. My second guest is Irene Fernández Villegas. She is Associate Professor that uses her research experience to make the aviation sector more sustainable. Together we talk about climate impact, contrails and the limit of technology. Because the future of aviation isn't just a technical challenge, it is a human one. Let's get into the conversation. So welcome, you both, Irene, Vincent. And my first question in this podcast is, what is your favorite type of coffee? Irene?
I don't drink coffee.
I was already expecting an answer.
Yeah. So I love the smell of coffee.
Yeah.
But I really do not like the taste. And my favorite coffee in terms of smell, I don't know. I just like them all.
And do you drink tea?
I drink tea.
What kind of tea?
Herbal tea.
Herbal tea. Okay.
Yeah.
That keeps you awake during your work and exercise?
Well, I don't need that to stay awake, I think. I'm actually really proud that I don't need a drug to keep me awake.
That's true. Yeah, you get addicted to coffee. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And Vincent, what is your favorite coffee?
So I don't necessarily have like a favorite bean or something. I just drink my coffee black.
Yeah.
But I do like an iced coffee on a warm day.
Yeah.
Or like a good Italian espresso, or like a good caffè sciacquerato. Do you know that?
No.
Okay, I think it's an Italian. Well, it must be an Italian thing, but it's basically you have some ice,
yeah,
and you pour an espresso over it. You shake it. That's where the sciacquerato comes from.
Yeah,
I think maybe I'm just coming up with something, but I had this at some point, and it's really nice. So it's just sort of like an iced coffee, but you get a nice foam on it as well.
Nice, thanks. If you were standing at that coffee machine and some random person shows up and asks you, hey, what do you do here at the TU Delft? Can you explain it in one sentence?
I can do it in one word.
In one word?
Yes, I'm an activist.
An activist?
Yes.
That's nice. And can you elaborate a bit on that?
So I'm an associate professor at aerospace engineering.
Yeah.
And I used to be a normal academic a long time ago, developing stuff, writing papers, getting money, PhDs. And then one day I couldn't live with that anymore. I was feeling too anxious about climate change and sustainability issues, and I felt that I was not contributing enough. So then I slowly changed, and now I don't do the normal academic stuff anymore, and I'm just trying to make sure that our students have at least basic knowledge on climate change to begin with, but also the whole sustainability, all the issues that we're facing actually, which is not only climate change.
So you're a associate professor,
and
Vincent is a assistant professor.
Yes.
And maybe it's good to switch to you, Vincent, to introduce yourself a bit more.
I research the climate impact of aviation as well, so I think we can have a very interesting conversation today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Vincent, you did your bachelor's here at TU Delft Aerospace. Yes. I think you moved to the UK for your
Yes, for
masters?
my master I went to the UK.
And for your PhD in America?
Yeah. So that's also how we met, right?
Yeah.
You met me the day after I graduated with my PhD.
Yeah.
Okay, now I remember it wasn't actually the day before. It was also the first day I started working in Delft, even though I wasn't actually physically there yet. But it was March 1, so that's when my contract started. Of course, they knew I wasn't there. I took a day off that day. So yes, I did my PhD there, and then I was fortunate enough to get a job here again as an assistant professor, and I'm still very happy with that decision to come back.
And why did you choose the route from being in the Netherlands to the UK to Boston in America?
I think part of it is back then you would still look at. I don't want to get too political, but you would look at the United States still and think of it as like, wow, they are really doing impressive things there, especially when it comes to science. So I initially always wanted to do my master there, and then things changed a bit, but I could still go to the UK. I wanted to go abroad as well to get some new life experience. And then I was fortunate enough to still get accepted into a PhD program in the US. And I couldn't let that opportunity go. And well, actually at that point I was like, am I going to do it? And then a friend of mine, a Dutch guy who was also at Delft before and actually studied at MIT, he said, you need to come, you will absolutely love this. And I was a bit in doubt because, well, I wasn't sure whether I was going to do a PhD or not. And I figured I don't really need a second master's degree. But I just went ahead, took the shot, and that was a really life-changing decision because that sort of put me on this path of researching aviation's climate impact. And I'm still doing that.
What is the topic you are researching here at the TU?
Yeah, so the climate impact of aviation, I think for most people, they just think about CO2, right? And that's a big part of it. But there's another big part of it, and that's non-CO2, which is basically a term for a collection of different emissions and pathways in which aviation can impact the climate. And you have one major contributor to this non-CO2 impact is or are contrails, which are those line-shaped clouds. Contrails.
Yeah,
I was going to explain it.
Yeah.
So a contrail is a short word for condensation trail, and essentially you can think of it as your breath condensing on a cold day. So you have the engine exhaust, which is quite humid and warm. That's your breath, and then it mixes with the cold, dry ambient air. And then if conditions are right, which usually they are at high altitudes, you will see a contrail. And those contrails in certain conditions, they can last around for many hours, like today, for example. Believe me if I say that today there are many contrails that have formed hours ago and you can still see them. And like any other cloud, they can impact Earth's energy balance. And the scientific consensus is that the net effect of contrails is warming, and actually in a way that is, in terms of magnitude, somewhat comparable to the CO2 emissions of aviation. So it's really a big concern. And my research is all about how can we better understand those contrails, and ultimately how can we create operational strategies, but also maybe technology that helps us avoid this impact pathway.
And if you look at the sky, you see an aircraft and you don't see a contrail,
yes,
is it less bad than if it's visible, or is there no difference?
No, there is a difference. The one sort of tricky point here is that technically contrails can also cool the Earth. It very much depends on what time of the day they form, where they form, right? If they form above the ocean, they can be a lot more cooling than if they form above an ice surface, right? Because an ice surface is already very bright and white and the ocean isn't actually. So the scientific answer here is it depends. But most of the time, it is not a good thing to form a persistent contrail. Persistent means that it lasts for longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah. And these particles in that contrail, that's the bad thing of the contrail.
It's not like the engine exhaust contains that much water, but you sort of cause the ice cloud formation process to start earlier than it would have been naturally. So most of the ice in a contrail, because the contrail is just ice particles, is not from the emitted water vapor, but it's actually from the environment.
Yeah.
So it's a change to natural ice cloudiness, and that makes it that causes its warming impact. It also makes it complicated to study, because there's this question you can ask yourself: if you see all these ice clouds formed by aircraft, if there weren't any aircraft, would these ice clouds have formed anyways, right? So studying the impact is really quite complicated, and you need both observations and models, and I'm more on the observation side. So I just look at pictures of contrails basically and try to extract information of them, and it's really fun.
Yeah. And Irene, back to your, let's say, research PhD topic when you were born in Spain, studied in Spain.
Yes.
And your PhD is in Spain as well.
Yes.
What was the topic?
Yeah, so I did my PhD on resistance welding of thermoplastic composite structures. Okay. Which one?
Which one? No, maybe you can explain in general, maybe composites or thermoplastics.
Okay.
Or,
Composites. Okay, so these are lightweight materials that are very strong, very stiff, and very light. And we use them a lot for new aircraft, especially. And they are composed of carbon fibers and a polymer, a resin, a plastic that binds them together. That plastic can be two families. One of them is thermoset, and another one is thermoplastic.
Yep.
The thermoplastic it has the ability to be welded, which cannot happen with thermosets. So they are not used a lot. The thermoplastic composites, they are not used a lot yet. But the whole idea is that because they can be welded and they can make the assembly process much faster, then the idea is to eventually in the future bring them to aircraft as well.
And why are that thermoplastic composites not used yet? In a big way.
Well, the way I explained this to my students in the past was we started using composites in aircraft in the 70s. And at that point, the only high-performance composites we had were thermosets. Thermoplastic plastics existed, but they hadn't developed plastics that had high properties. These new materials entered the aircraft manufacturing industry, and then we gained a lot of experience on their use, their properties, and all that. And then years later, they started developing the high performance thermoplastic composites, thermoplastic resins, and we found that it was a little bit too late because the industry already had a lot of experience with the other materials, and in an industry where safety is so important, it's very, very difficult to make changes. So even though there are clear advantages to the use of thermoplastics, all this experience, all this know-how that we already have in the industry, well, it weighs more.
So is it then safety that's hitting the brakes, or also we always do this like that and then not looking into new opportunities?
I would say both, a little bit of both. Thermoplastic composites have a lot of advantages compared to thermosets, but they also have disadvantages. So it's not all gold. You also have to take that into account. And one of the disadvantages is the price. Yep. So that doesn't help. And also the temperatures that you use to manufacture the parts are higher, which costs more energy, more money.
Yeah.
In the long run, they can help reduce costs. But if you think of the initial investments, then it doesn't help.
Yeah. No. And you mentioned resistance welding.
Yes.
And now, I think after 10 plus years research we transferred towards continuous ultrasonic welding.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
20 years.
Yes.
20 years.
Yeah, so I did my PhD on resistance welding back in Spain. I used that technique because it was very simple. It's very difficult. Anything that has to do with welding is very difficult. But the hardware that you needed for that was quite simple, so that made it easy. But then I came to Delft to do a postdoc.
Yeah.
And then the topic changed. Even though after my PhD, I swore that I would never work on welding again because it's difficult, as I said before. I came to Delft and then I switched to ultrasonic welding, which is ultrasonic welding.
Yeah.
Okay, so in ultrasonic welding, we use ultrasonic vibrations, which are high frequency vibrations, to heat up the material.
Mm-hmm.
And we heat it up super fast. So that's already a big advantage compared to any other welding technique out there.
And if you look at that specific technology, so both of you research, so you're in the front end of more material research, and Vincent is more like, if the aircraft's already flying, how can we lower that impact, I would say. If you look both from your perspectives, I would say 10, 15 years, where do we stand?
I think we're going to have made a lot of progress in terms of operationally mitigating the climate impact of aviation. So this basically involves answering the question, can we take current aircraft and fly them in a different way to reduce their climate impact? And because, as I said before, it's not only about CO2, but also about non-CO2, there's opportunity, but it's also more complicated. Basically, when you think about contrails, you need to be able to predict well where are these contrails going to form, but also stick around for a long amount of time. And this is something that exists in numerical weather prediction models. So weather models, the ones that you use every day to look at what the weather is going to be in the next couple of days, they are not currently really equipped to do this properly. Of course, there's a lot of research going on into improving this, but it's only recently that we've really started asking this question. And what I see is that I started doing this topic in 2019, 2020, at the start of my PhD. And since then, I think there have been not necessarily incredible scientific findings that have turned the field around, but a lot of putting science into practice and getting it closer to the airlines. There's been a massive and increasing amount of interest into this topic. And it's also partly driven by developments in the policy realm. So the European Union has, as you probably know very well, an emissions trading scheme for CO2. And I think it's been around for 15 years or more. And based on what I've always heard, that has been incredibly successful at reducing CO2 emissions. And it's a particular kind of mitigation system that it's a market-based measure. So basically, I always simplify things as saying, if you turn climate change into a money problem, you've solved half of it. Yes, might be overstating or oversimplifying, but that's my perspective. So the EU is actually exploring the possibility of not only including CO2, but also including these non-CO2 impacts. And actually, since last year, they required aircraft operators within the EU to at least monitor and report these non-CO2 emissions. And of course, all aircraft operators are now very interested in understanding more about these impacts and also how to reduce them. And that has led to a lot of extra research in the past 5 years. And I am personally seeing so many intelligent, capable, and motivated people working on the problem now of how can we better predict the regions that we need to fly around? How can we better optimize trajectories? How can we better help airlines and ANSPs to do this? How can we effectively regulate things? So that there are multiple conferences every year specifically about this topic. Like there was one last week at the start of March, and there's one again in September. And whenever I leave one of those conferences, I just feel very optimistic about our ability to actually reduce aviation's climate impact by these means.
Yeah. So we can lower that emission by the current status of technology of the aircraft.
And that is very important about this, is that this is actually something that we can realistically do within 5 years, I think.
And so what is necessary for that? Let's say the shortcut to the solution.
Well, you need some kind of regulation system in place. I'm not an economist, but I think it's unfair to expect airlines to increase their costs, because it could be that they need to increase their costs in some way to actually avoid certain climate-sensitive regions without actually incentivizing them. Because I am sure that some airline will then just say, screw it, we're not going to do it, and we can provide cheaper tickets to our customers. And there will always be 18-year-olds who do not care, or even older people who do not care about how much they do care about how much a ticket costs, but they don't care about the impact. So it starts with regulation, but I also think that we need a bit more research in terms of how we can deal with these uncertainties in our ability to quantify all these impacts, and how that's going to affect any kind of regulatory scheme, because you don't want to implement something and then in a couple of years down the line regret it.
And for you, Irene, if you look at continuous ultrasonic welding in 10, 15 years?
10, 15 years. Let's do a little bit of wishful thinking here.
Yeah, sure.
What I see happening is this is a technology that is new, that was created in Delft. Not ultrasonic welding per se, but continuous ultrasonic welding.
Yeah.
That was created here, and it was something that people told me that's impossible, that's never going to happen. And it did happen, and then it spread a lot. So there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of research centers all over the world working on that. So based on that, I hope that in 10, 15 years from now, I would like to see that these materials, these lightweight composites, that they get to all type of aircraft, because now we see only the big aircraft, the double AL aircraft.
Yeah.
They use composites because they don't manufacture a lot of them per year, so then they can afford to use those materials because it takes longer to manufacture those aircraft with thermoset composites than with metals. But then if you look at all the smaller aircraft, the single aisle aircraft, the one that would use to travel in Europe or something like that, those are still mostly metal. And that's because we need manufacturing. So if we want to introduce composites there, we need manufacturing solutions that allow faster production rates. And that's what we believe continuous ultrasonic welding does. So long story short, I hope that, I don't know if in 10, 15 years or a little bit longer, I hope to see that composites have entered the market of small aircraft, relatively small aircraft, and now these aircraft are lighter weight than they are now. What Airbus is always saying is that they are expecting to reduce the weight by 20% by using these materials.
Burning less fuel.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say that, so that would tackle the other problem. So not the non-CO2 effects, but the CO2 effects of aviation, which, from what I understand, they are more difficult to solve than the non-CO2 effects of aviation. And I hope that, that continuous ultrasonic welding helps make this shift.
And if you, maybe a general question, right? So what does the industry needs from us as TU Delft? Or what?
Well, what I've learned in my career is that they need us to show them what's possible. because they're very conservative, as I mentioned before. And I remember the first times I talked with people from Airbus about, hey, there's this new technology, it's actually very cool. They just didn't want to hear about it. It was only when I was able to show it to them, it's like, okay, look, it actually works, that they started listening. So I think they need more than just words. They need proof. So that's what we can give them.
Yeah. And you, Vincent?
Can I just ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, sure.
I'm wondering about the recyclability of
Yes.
thermosets versus thermoplastics.
Yes. That's your question?
Sorry, I am wondering. It's not a question, but maybe you could tell us more about that. Is there an advantage of using thermoplastics?
Well, yes, that's what we always say. So thermoplastics can be remelted, right? And because of that, then they offer another possibility to recycle or reuse the materials.
Okay. And in any other industry, are they also using thermoplastics for composites?
Yeah, the car industry.
Car industry, okay.
So if you look at flying in the future, how do you think flying would look like if we say goodbye to fossil fuels?
I think realistically it's just going to be a combination of many solutions.
Yeah.
I think we need... There's no silver bullet, right? In theory, for example, a sustainable aviation fuel could have zero CO2 impact. You're shaking your head.
I'm shaking
now.
my hand saying no way.
No? So sustainable aviation
but CO2
fuels?
No, not even. I think
No?
I think there's very. I'm not an expert on the topic, but I'm seeing now in my head a graph where you look at the impact of different types of SAF as sustainable aviation or biofuel, so fuel that comes from biomass.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot out there, a lot of types of biomass that allow you to get zero
CO2
emissions.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you look at the most common ones like palm oil, actually the emissions are, I don't know if higher, but at this same order of magnitude as if you're just using fossil fuels. So you have to be very careful with that stuff.
Yeah. So I am not an expert on that particular topic either, but I do know that in theory they could greatly reduce the amount of CO2 emissions of aviation.
Yes.
Okay. Can we agree on that?
We can agree on that, but we need to be careful. Yeah.
No, it's not a
Yes.
silver bullet, but
Yes.
I wanted to give it as an example of how some people see it as a silver bullet, whereas there's a lot of limitations to it, right? Not only thinking about, okay, how much CO2 is produced when you produce the fuel itself from its constituents, but also how do we create enough of it to power all the aircraft that are flying around, right?
Yes.
That's a significant challenge. So
maybe a question in regard to that. What is the real challenge we need to tackle there?
the real challenge was sustainable aviation
Yeah.
fuels and producing it. I am not the person to answer that question,
Or
unfortunately.
fly more sustainable?
Fly more sustainable. It is a combination of things.
Yeah, but
And-
what is it? So if you look at all these combination variables,
Yeah.
where's the real challenge?
I think
You think?
each solution has its own challenges.
Yep.
So hydrogen has engineering challenges, right? I would say.
And energy challenges.
And
It
also producing
requires
it-
a lot of energy to produce hydrogen.
Produce
Yep.
it cleanly also needs a lot of energy.
Yes.
Same thing goes for sustainable aviation fuel,
Yes.
right? Although that has perhaps less engineering challenges in terms of getting current engines to fly on it. So that's helpful. But also the operational mitigation also has challenges, but not on the aircraft side of things. And that's what makes me hopeful about addressing it in a short time period, is because we don't need to go through all those steps in terms of producing, certification. The cycle of introducing new technologies in aircraft is unfortunately quite long, and that's also why we are hammering on it now. We need to investigate these things now to get to some kind of climate neutral aviation in 2050. But it won't be easy.
No.
I would say not possible either.
No, not possible.
No. So answering your question,
Yeah.
was it, how do you see sustainable aviation in the future?
Without
with
sustainable or without fossil fuels.
Without fossil fuels. Okay, so I think we agree that that's not going to happen in the near future.
No.
So if we think of, let's say, 2050, I think it is not possible to meet any goals, like being net zero emissions by that time, if we just focus on technology.
So I was trying to ask, or going to ask is, do you think we need more technology to get there? But I think your answer will be no.
Okay, I think we need more technology. We need to develop technology. We need to find ways to be able to produce the amount of biofuels that we need for the aviation industry without them competing with our food system, for instance, or without creating other problems with deforestation, land usage, or you name it.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, technological challenge. Then the hydrogen challenge as well. So how are you going to implement it in aircraft? How are you going to make it safe to fly on hydrogen? And also, how are you going to perhaps use less energy to produce that hydrogen? So I think you need technology, but I think it's a little bit foolish to think that only with technology we're going to get anywhere.
Clear? Can I say it's a behavior challenge as well? If I look at more sustainable flight, but also what Vincent is trying to say is that we need to change behavior of these airlines as well to fly differently.
That is one way in which we can do it. But are you talking more about just flying less? Is that
yes? That's what I'm talking about.
That is the most.
Is that the big elephant in this small room, or in general in the discussion?
I would say so. It's a big elephant indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is the trivial solution, as we always say, but that is a more mathematical statement. But we should definitely try to fly less. I'm doing that as well.
Yeah, but you said there was no silver bullet, but actually I think that's the one.
Agreed, but I do wonder, and I'm again not the person to answer this, what kind of economical impacts would it have if you fly that much less? I know that there are definitely certain amounts of trips that we can all do less of or take a different mode of transport for. But I also wonder what kind of impacts it would have.
Yeah, indeed. I'm not an expert on that either, but I think that goes into showing that it is not just that little piece of the puzzle that we need to change. We need to change the whole economical system.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that new economical system, flying less and doing less of many things can work.
Yeah, I think part of it can be done through raising awareness, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, I do think that the general person has a idea of aviation's climate impact that is perhaps larger than it actually is. Doesn't mean it's less of a problem than it is. Because in terms of percentage, it might grow a lot in the future, right? When we decarbonize other industries. Mm. But indeed also, behavioral changes it ultimately comes down to some form of money, right?
Or also creating awareness. And that's what I'm trying to do now with our students. Just give them some orders of magnitude so that they understand that, perhaps, when you look at the global impact of aviation, it's relatively small, even if you consider the non-CO2 effects, right? It's pretty small. But then, and that's because not a lot of people fly.
Exactly.
Right? But then if you look at your own footprint, if you fly, that's probably the biggest contributor to
100%.
Your emissions, right? So I try to make them aware of that. And of course, I'm not very popular at the Faculty of Aerospace Engineering when I tell them, look,
stop flying.
Stop flying.
Yeah.
But
maybe that's a nice bridge, because from, let's say, a hardcore researcher on a hardcore topic like ultrasonic welding in carbon fiber composites, you changed your direction into educating young students how they can change their behavior or what the impact is on flying on the environment.
Yeah.
Can you tell a bit about that?
Yeah, I went through a crisis because even though I know that the technology I was developing was going to hopefully in many years from now make aircraft lighter and therefore contribute to lowering their emissions, I also knew that the industry wanted that particular welding technique, which is very fast, because they wanted to produce more aircraft per month. Right. So that was something I could not, I couldn't live with. So then I decided, okay, this is enough. I do want to have a real impact. Of course, I made sure that the technology I developed was in good hands, and they kept developing it because I still like it very much. But then I tried to find something that could have a bigger impact. And then I was thinking very hard, and I was even thinking of leaving the university. But then I realized, okay, well, this is an amazing place. We have so many students, and they are very fresh, and they are open-minded. Well, this is an amazing chance opportunity to plant seeds. You don't know what's going to happen with those seeds, but to start planting seeds.
And you're doing that with the Climate Fresque Challenge?
Yes. Well, that's the beginning.
Okay.
That's the beginning.
Yeah.
So I realized that our students in general, they don't know so much about sustainability. They don't know so much about the problems that we're facing. So I thought, okay, let's start very small, very basic. And this Climate Fresque, it is a workshop, a 3-hour workshop that was developed by a lecturer in France with the idea of giving students some basic knowledge and understanding on climate change.
Yeah.
So what causes climate change and what are the effects? And also to give them space to think about, okay, what can we do about this? So I thought, okay, let's start with this as a relatively easy, short thing that we can integrate in our curriculum, because my idea is to integrate it in all faculties at TU Delft. And then we take it from there, because I think one of my mottos is, it is not only climate change. I think I've seen, throughout my years of being at TU Delft, that we do focus a lot on climate change. But there are many more problems. And if we just focus on climate change, we're screwed.
Yeah.
So my idea is starting there, because it's the thing that resonates with people. But then continue talking about all the other sustainability issues and finding ways to get to all our students.
And was it hard to get it implemented in the courses?
Super hard. What was hard and a little bit disheartening, actually, to me, was the lack of interest from the students.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if it's lack of interest or lack of time. I would say it's the second. So, I remember the first Climate Fresque workshop we organized in the context of a course. We were offering it to 80 students, master students, super motivated to learn new stuff. And I organized the logistics of it, which are quite complicated for so many people. And then only 2 students showed up.
From that 82 students?
Yeah, from 82. And that was very sad. And I as I said before, I think we squeeze them so much. They have so many things to do that if they see, a 3-hour block in their agendas, it's like, workshop or something, whatever. They just they prefer to use that time, for whatever project they have a deadline on. And I find that extremely sad. And it's also to me, it's kind of a representation of what happens at other levels. I've also tried to do this workshop with my colleagues, and I've managed to get many of them to participate, but because I've been a pain and just reminding them all the time. I think, Martin, you know about that.
I know. I did the workshop.
You did the workshop.
I think twice, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you. Good for you.
Yeah.
But they are so busy. Everybody's so busy. They just don't have time for this. And I find it sad and scary, because if we don't have time to care about or to learn about these threats that are so real and so scary, what's going to happen with
Yeah.
us.
I think time is. I think it's a matter of prioritizing. For me personally, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you make time for such an event. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's we have. I think we need to. There's a long way to go. I think.
Yes,
You
and
think?
we don't have time. That's
No.
the thing.
And do you see that people here at the university choose their studies to make a change in the future of how can we fly more sustainable? Because when I remember when I was starting my aviation studies, I like aircraft. Like aircraft were cool. Okay, let's do something like that. I was not, sustainable aviation was not a topic in my time. Does it change, or is it still people have different motivations to start aviation studies? What do you see if you talk with these young people?
I cannot generalize because I haven't talked to all of them, but I see that they want to contribute in general. They really want to contribute to a more sustainable future, sustainable aviation. But I think they fall in the trap of technology, that the techno enthusiasm, techno fixes. Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
You can ring the bell.
How would I
Techno
define that?
fixes.
Yeah, so techno fixes. So, we have a problem that we have created with technology. Don't worry, we will develop another technology that is going to solve it. And probably that technology will create a new problem. And I'm not saying that technology is not a part of the puzzle here. I think it is a very important part of the puzzle, but we need to look bigger, wider.
Thanks.
Can I add something to this, just from my perspective? So I did my bachelor here at the aerospace engineering faculty. When I graduated, I thought that sustainability meant making your aircraft just a bit more aerodynamic, right? Those were the ways to have an impact. And then I was exposed to the research I did during my PhD, and it just completely changed the way I look at it. It is a much broader problem, and it's not something you can only solve through making things a bit more efficient.
No.
Right? And so could you explain a bit more? So aerospace engineering bachelor students, they have to do this workshop now. Is that the case?
Yes. So, we just ran a pilot for the first time. We made it part of a project in the first year of the bachelor. And so students had to do it. And it was great because it was mandatory. So all of them attended. And it was really good. We got really good feedback from the students. They really loved it. So I'm pretty convinced that it's going to stay. So yes, I think from now on, all bachelor students will have to do it.
I think that's already a very good step. But in my opinion, I think they should also have dedicated courses, maybe one. And I hereby sign up to give that course. I will be more than happy to do that. I know it's very hard to find space in such a full bachelor program, but I will be more than happy to teach it. It is so important, I think, if you learn it at the start, because the problem is also we have this at the bachelor, your third year, you have a design synthesis exercise. And there's always a part of the design that is sustainability. Yeah. And most students are like, okay, listen up, guys. Who's going to do the sustainability part? I really don't care.
Pick a draw.
Yeah.
Who's going to tick the box?
Yeah. And that is more because it's at least when I did the bachelor, it was just not a part of it, right? And I think, of course, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and say we need to change it, but I think it's you need to know something about it. Right.
Absolutely.
And actually, the stuff that we know about the climate that we figured out is it's just fascinating. Of course, I'm biased because I like to do research in this area as well. But I'm happy to hear about this climate fresco workshop as well. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, indeed. It's I'm super happy, and I totally agree with you. We need more. But you wouldn't believe how incredibly difficult it is to introduce new courses in our bachelor. Luckily, now we are refreshing the bachelor. So hopefully we'll manage to get a little bit more sustainability in it, but I'm not 100% sure.
So Vincent, my question is if you have there's a question for children. It's like if you're the mayor for one day, if you're the king for one day, what should you do? What do you think you can do? My question to you is, if you have the total freedom of your work from this point forward, what should you do, or what are you going to change?
I think in terms of realism, I would pretty much keep on doing what I'm doing. I would expand a bit. So I would have more researchers working on this topic, because I think I usually have more ideas than I can actually have worked out. And I think they're all equally important to solve on the short term, right? So we could solve them sequentially, but ideally we solve them in parallel. But if I'm the mayor or just a politician, I would just reach out to someone who's very experienced in just in climate policy. So how do you make policy that effectively helps reducing emissions?
With your input? Or?
Well, just learn from them.
Yeah, okay.
And have other climate scientists sit with them and figure out, okay, in an ideal world, which is not the one we live in, what would such a system look like, right? Because I have a very narrow viewpoint here. I think it's all about making it. The problem with climate change is you emit something now, you don't realize the effects until many years later. Like if you think last summer there were of course heat waves, that's not because of the emissions in 2025. That is because of the emissions years ago, right? Yeah. So it's only going to get worse, most likely. It's only going to get worse. And the moment you turn something into a short-term problem, because now I think you can have company A and company B. They do the exact same thing. Both of them emit just as much. And company A suddenly thinks, okay, we're going to cut our emissions, but it's going to increase our costs, so decrease our profits. That's what company A is going to do. Company B is not going to do that. A couple of years later, company A no longer exists.
No.
You need to have some kind of economic incentive for this. Yeah. And that's also one of the reasons why I think the EU ETS for CO2 works so well. I think that's one way in which we can have a lot of impact, but feel free if you're listening to this and you know more about how to effectively do this to correct me, but that's just my point of view here. Yeah, and also educate, right?
Yeah.
And make things hopeful. And also we can be hopeful in certain ways. There are many policies that have already been implemented in the past that have successfully dealt with huge environmental problems. Air quality issues, right? The Great Smoke of London, LA. I mean, it's still not perfect, but the air quality there is a lot better because of science and policy working together.
Yeah. Ozone layer.
Ozone hole, that was my second example. One small thing about those that differentiates that from the climate change problem is, again, those are relatively quick effects. Yes. So the moment you emit, quite soon after, you'll see the effect. Yeah. And we don't have that with climate change.
Plus, it was a technological issue. I mean, something that could be solved with technology. So we could change one product for other product, and then that was it. But here, we need to change our ways. Otherwise, this is not going to happen. Yeah. And I think that's where it becomes super hard.
So I prepared 3 statements for you to choose from. So Irene, first one is for you. Teaching or doing research?
Teaching.
And for you, Vincent?
Research.
I used to be like you. That's completely okay.
But if I'm allowed to teach the course in the bachelor, then I would say teaching.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Second statement. We should focus more on technology, or we should change behavior.
Why not both?
You
I'm not allowed. Okay. Behavior is the more trivial solution.
Yeah. And Irene?
Behavior.
Yeah.
I would say both as well, but behavior and it's trivial, but it's not trivial. It's actually super hard, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like someone says, okay, I want to lose weight, so I'll eat less and work out more. Sounds easy, hard to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can agree on that from my experience. Third statement: not fly at all versus fly consciously.
I would fly consciously.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I mean, I wouldn't have been where I am now without flying across the pond a couple of times. But I've also made a conscious decision to fly very little, take the train whenever I can.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for this nice conversation.
Thank you.
And for your
Thank
time.
You.
Technology can take us far, but it doesn't decide how we use it. And in the end, the future of aviation depends on the choices we are willing to make. Thanks for listening to Coffee with Martin, and tune in for the next episode.